Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Toplofty Lounge, episode 93 Conversations for the Elevated. Welcome to all my fellow snobs. I am your host, Science Fiction Snob. This week on the program, we're going to talk about the technology of Star Trek. Cam's going to take us through and explain how it all works, and even how you can build some of it in your own basement or backyard. That's right. That'll be very cool. I can't wait to build my own proton torpedo this week after Cam instructs us how to. And speaking of Cam, let me introduce my co-host, the man who always lies about how long it takes to fix something. It's Cam. Say hello, Cam.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Good evening. Yes. Hello. So, Cam, how was your week?
It was a blur.
A blur. Oh my! It went that fast.
Yes.
What's so busy? What are you doing?
None of your business.
So blur. Oh. Okay. All right. Never mind. Okay. Well, what was I doing this week? Oh, geez. Yeah, mine was kind of a blur too. We had a bunch go on. A few things with the kids, supporting them, doing their kid things. Singing class, band stuff, all that kind of thing. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, that didn't work very well. All right. Well, what about Cam? What have you done to increase your sci-fi snobbery this week?
Well, that's an excellent question, Sci-Fi Snob, and let me tell you, I furiously, in the short few hours I had today, tried to read the entire Star Trek Next Generation technical manual to brush up on the topics we're going to be talking about. And I should probably point out that you are a big fat liar, because there's no way in hell that we're going to get to even a fraction of the topics within Star Trek technology, because it goes pretty deep.
Well, we don't have to be that deep. We could just go over. I don't know. Do we have to go that deep into it? I mean, I'm surprised. I guess
we gotta fill an hour and a half, I guess.
I've got. Let me just see. I've got 2, 4. I've got about 7 of the major technologies that I put down to talk about. Yeah, I didn't think we would have to go that deeply into it, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, maybe you need a bit of a reminder.
I'm not an engineer, so I don't,
Okay, well, the reason we have this topic is because last week, I don't even remember what the heck did we talk about last week?
Technology that came true.
Oh, that's right. Right.
That has come,
okay, Yeah, so I think we were talking about 3D printers or something like that, probably.
Mm-hmm. That was one of them. Yeah.
And we got into a discussion regarding transporters and replicators and what that really means and everything. And our friend PB, who was in Jason's chat a couple hours ago, so I'm not sure if he's going to be here tonight, but he made a few claims, and honestly, I don't remember exactly what he said. But he's not here to defend himself, but I think he was not quite correct. And I had made some statements from memory at the time regarding transporter tech.
Well, I think I can, I can clear that up. It was with the replicator, yeah. And I kind of left that one to the last thing we would talk about. But it was the whole difference between, does the replicator need organic matter to work? I think it was focused around that.
I thought it was brought. You know what? We should go back to the tape. We should just watch that and fill up a good 10 minutes of time. Let's do that. You got it all queued up, right?
No, I don't have that queued up. What are you talking about?
Okay. Well, I intended actually to review the show to remind myself exactly what the debate was at the time. But anyway, well, okay. I guess we can get into it. But that was where this topic started out. And then you, because you have no respect for anyone's time or effort or anything of that sort, just said, oh, we're just going to talk about all Star Trek technology, as if that's, not a massive study. And while I have a lot of it in my memory, it's not as fresh as it once was. So, uh,
Ah, mm.
you know,
I am a demanding boss.
yeah, exactly. But
True. Well, I just had 7. I said warp drive, transporter, shields, tractor beam, phasers, proton torpedoes, replicators. I thought those were the main. Is there extra
well,
ones
I'm
you want to
sure
add
there
to
is,
that?
but each
I
of
think
these
those
is
are
a
the main.
freaking PhD study course to get into.
Well, that's
Star
true.
Trek is not Star Wars, right? Where it's like, well, what do you got? Oh, midichlorians. No, there's a lot of pseudoscience and some real science, behind these things, and they go into
Hmm.
a good amount of depth.
Well, I mean, we can just. I guess we could just jump in and dig in as deep as we can, and then go from there. And if we have to go a little bit, a couple weeks more, we could do that too. I suppose.
Yeah.
That sounds good to me. All right, but before we do, let's give people a chance to jump in and get off the finish off on Jeff's show, and then jump in here afterwards. Um, the So I mean, what? Well, I watched 2 movies this week, which are science fiction related. I would say. Um, the They're both Transformers movies, though. They just happen to be on. So I watched Bumblebee, which isn't too bad a movie. Have you seen Bumblebee?
Yeah, I saw it in the theater, and it
Oh,
has
really? Oh,
yeah, it had. I'm not sure if anything's come since. And with all the AI stuff, it's getting better and better in terms of that kind of thing. But at the time, it had the best Transformers scene of any movie, in my opinion. Which was they had the a few short scenes on Cybertron, from the distant past, and those were
hmm.
excellent, excellent.
Yeah. I remember those scenes there. Bumblebee escaping. Yeah. My daughter. I watched it with my daughter. She liked it.
Mhm.
She enjoyed it. I mean, it's kind of the main the main human is a girl. She's like just turns 18. She's fixing her car, that kind of thing. So it's probably a good um, main for her. Fits in with her. I thought it was pretty good though too. A little bit. I noticed that Michael Bay was an executive producer on it, but it wasn't a Michael Bay movie in the sense that it was all explosions and very little plot.
Mhm.
So 2018. What did your rating of it was? Let's compare it to the other Transformers type movies. So
Well, I would say it was. Well, I haven't seen them all, but it was. I mean, it was kind of limited, because it was really small scale. You had Bumblebee
yes,
and then a few others. It wasn't as like a bunch of them running around, but unless that's what you're looking for, just the general quality of it, I thought was significantly better. So, a solid movie. 4 out of 5 kind of thing.
yeah, I felt it was better than the average of the Transformer movies. Solid, and like you said, a little smaller scale. Incidentally, immediately afterwards, the Transformers Rise of the Beasts was also on. It was like going in a loop or something
Mhm.
like that. So my daughter watched a little bit of that one. That's the 2023 movie. I think it's the latest one with the Maximals in it, the animal type ones. And she was not impressed with that. She
Mm.
she said, "Oh, that's not as that one was good. First one was good. This one was kind of so yeah." Um, I think maybe keeping it smaller scale or different directors than Michael Bay might be a good idea to keep those movies a little bit better. But yeah, that's what we watched this week. Kind of run out of Marvel movies to watch, so we're trying to do doing some of those. Well, we're just doing whatever, but I don't know. I'm not sure what I should go to next. I'm thinking maybe the Mummy movies, the original ones with 1 and 2 with
Mhm. Brendan
what's his
Fraser.
name. Those are good family fun adventure movies that everybody can enjoy. It's hard to. Sometimes it's hard to get to find something that everybody likes. Though my older daughter is into. I mentioned this before. Is into the X-Files. So she's
Hmm.
she's watching all the X-Files. She's got the first 3 seasons. I think she's on season 3 or something like that. But we just found a DVD copy of season 1 for her and gave it to her. So
That's cool.
so she's enjoying those. She'd seen it, but she wants the physical copies now. I guess she's getting into physical copies of stuff, which is kind of
Makes
smart
sense.
considering what they're doing to our physical copies.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. Yeah, that's about it. I haven't done too much lately. I've been busy on my own as well too, doing this and that. So yeah, all right. Let's say good day to everyone in the chat. Man is in the chat. Man, just how do we say that, Cam? Help me out. Manchester, is that how you say it? Q2's in the chat as well. That's it. Everybody's hiding out. It says we got 5 viewers right now.
Oh boy,
a couple people are hiding. That's
well,
all right.
This show, people just don't like it.
I don't know. We're not doing. We're dropping down. All right. Well, did you enjoy my new thumbnail? Madman did that.
Yes, Madman made that for you because
we're trying to get a little fancier. Yeah. Madman took a picture for that one. Yeah, I post. That's my parlor right there, where I hang out, do most of my reading and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, all right. Okay, let's jump right into it. Then. Okay, so what? Get the rate. Oh, that's the last one. Replicator. Let's start with number 1. Warp drives. What do you know about warp drives, Cam? You tell us. I'll ask the questions and.
Oh yeah, yes. You'll ask a question and expect me to talk for a half hour. Got it.
Sure.
Well, it just so happens that in order to try and discuss this, as I mentioned, I'm referring. I honestly have no idea what any new Star Trek crap might be saying about any of this, and I don't care. So
I think we should stick with the old stuff. This, anything in the last 10 years is going to get retconned anyway. I mean, it's just garbage.
Right. So I'm relying heavily on the Star Trek Next Generation Technical Manual, which is largely about the Galaxy class ships, but has, there's so much of the technology is common through these things. So there's that. And then there was also something called Star Trek the Magazine that came out from, let's see. The first issue came out in, sorry, I'm just looking at them here, 1999, and it went through about 2003. And unlike, these were really excellent magazines. When I say magazine, you think, something that's just People Magazine or something. But these have, they're very high production value, and it included a ton of technical briefings in them. So it's like, they had interviews with, actors and things like that, and various other things. But the technical briefings, which were typically, they had 4 of them, were either rehashing or new studies, very similar to what's in the technical manual. So it's actually really cool if you're into that kind of background stuff behind all these stories. So I have to tell you that the warp drive stuff is one of the more complex things, because it's kind of the foundation of the whole Star Trek universe, is the fact that that they can have any of these stories at all is because they have warp drive. So man, it's such a broad topic.
All right, well, let me just say, okay, my understanding, as a relative layman here compared to others, so I mean, warp drive generally speaks works by it creates the two nacelles create a bubble around the ship, and then the space time in front of the ship is folded, or and then it expands as it comes out of the ship, so the ship moves through space in that way. Is that correct? Pretty much. No.
Kind of. It's again, I'm not conversant enough to be able to quote it exactly, but I did read this part of it, and so you do produce um, warp fields, which um, the core way that it works is it shifts the ship into subspace, which lowers its mass, effective mass, I guess, or apparent mass, because it really can't change the
Mhm.
mass. But in terms of moving through real space, at least, or because that's the problem is as you approach light speed, it's basically it
Yeah,
takes infinite energy to
it's
do.
impossible to reach light speed normally,
Right. And
as
so
Einstein says.
right, and so this is, and it's because of the mass issue. So the way that they do it is they, um, shift into subspace and reduce the effective mass. But the and you were kind of correct in the way that you were describing the warp fields. Is that it is a shaped field such that it does propel you, but there it's it's more detailed in that it's like they have these overlapping fields that create a pressure differential that propels you forward, and it's like there's cycling that goes on and all this other stuff. But so yeah, the simple version is that they're using these fields to manipulate uh, space to give you the effective speed of being faster than light,
Right.
even though I guess technically it isn't.
Well, yeah, because you're basically you're outside of normal space, so you don't have to follow the rules anymore. Einstein's rules of
Right.
relativity. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what? I just have a relatively short paragraph here from this is from Star Trek the Magazine, Volume 1, Issue 14 from June 2000. And I had read this and it's matching the technical manual pretty closely. But what it says is a warp engine works by distorting the space time continuum, pushing a vessel into subspace, and thereby reducing its apparent mass. Once its effective mass has been reduced, a vessel can overcome the restrictions imposed by Einstein's general theory of relativity, multiply, I'm sorry, and accelerate to faster than light speed. Um, and it within the universe, Zephram Cochrane uh, is the scientist who basically accomplished this. Now, I don't know why it's like everything in here is kind of like the warp field is measured in Cochrane's, for example, the unit of um, uh, power for warp fields, but warp speed existed before Cochrane came around because as we saw in
yeah,
what was that one the Borg one,
first
uh,
first contact.
First Contact, right? um, that of course Vulcans and many other races already had warp drive, so but I guess it's an Earth centric kind of thing, so that's why it's there, and I guess Vulcans don't care. um, but they, like I said, there's all kinds of other things. It's talking about how the energy transfer works and all that, and because of this, you really need to get into, if you really want to understand all of it, how the matter antimatter system works as well and produces it. But you said about the nacelles, that's what produces the warp fields essentially, and it does shape it in different ways to be able to move, not just in a straight line, to steer essentially. And a lot of pseudoscience, and it's not even pseudoscience, it's just fiction. It's just science fiction, but it's pretty good in terms of hard science fiction. It's the warp drive is theoretically something that real scientists talk about. I don't know that it rises to the level of a legitimate theory or not yet, but that's the idea. Um, the other thing, and I think you've got it on your little chart there. Um, the warp factors are very nonlinear. It's
Yeah.
warp. Now it changed between the original series and Next Generation series.
Yes. So
Do you want to talk about that?
these are the numbers for the original series, and it was basically it's a cube number, right?
Yeah.
So warp factor one is one times one times one. So Alpha Centauri is 4.3 light years from Earth, and one times one is one. So therefore, it'll take you. Warp factor one is basically the speed of light.
Right. Yeah, but
and
so
just
that
going from there.
that was discarded later on. So they still maintained that warp factor 1 was. Hey JT, how you doing? Oh, we've got a few other people here. Neutron, James is
Yeah.
here.
Welcome.
Um, but then because in the original show there was something where they went above warp 10 for something crazy happened, warp 14 or something like that. But in the next generation, they basically redid the scale such that warp 10 was defined as infinite speed. So the closer you get, you're starting to get very nonlinear. Now it's not exactly a clean, simple formula. It's it gets highly parabolic, after 9.9, let's say. Um, but something around 9.6, I think, is like 3,000 times the speed of light. Um, so
Yeah, I mean, if you look, like I said, these are the original ones. If you look at the warp 8, it's going to take you 3.09 days to get to Alpha Centauri from Earth. That's pretty long comparatively. That's the nearest star. Comparatively, how things happen in the show, right? They seem to go a lot farther. Um, you know, 3 days to our nearest star. That's they tend to just oh, how long did it take to get there? Oh, we get there, right?
yeah.
But yeah, anyway, go on with the. You're right.
So
They've changed it for the original, for after the original series.
yeah, this issue of the magazine, they have a few nice comparisons here. They've got some graphics and some charts, tables, but similar. This is mentioning, they just have the one from Alpha Centauri. They have, for example, um, warp 1, 6, 9.6, and 9.9999. And then it says, to get from the Earth to the Moon, across the solar system, the nearest star, across the galactic sector, to the Andromeda Galaxy, for example. So just a few things. Warp 1 to get to the nearest star, about 5 years. So it's, not unlike what you're showing there. But warp point 6, you could cross the solar system in 2 minutes or to the nearest star in 5 days. Warp 6 being kind of,
Warp
that's what they
six,
use
right?
as the kind of the common cruising speed in Star Trek.
Yeah,
Um,
if you notice in the Next Generation, anytime they go like warp 8 or above, Geordi always complains that there's going to and et cetera, et cetera.
right. Yeah. Right. When they start pushing it. But so originally warp 9.6 was the maximum speed for the maximum standard, recommended speed for the Enterprise. And in that example, to cross the solar system would take 20 seconds, 22 hours to get to the nearest star. Across the Federation, though, it would take you 5 years. So, and the reason they did a lot of this is they wanted the Star Trek world to be quite large.
Yeah.
They didn't want it to be like, oh yeah, you just in 5 minutes you're anywhere kind of thing. Um,
Well, and even
and
then, I mean, it's just interesting because it's how we have no idea how how big space is, right? Like the Federation, 5 years to get across it, and 20 minutes to get across the solar system. I mean, that just gives you an idea of how big it is.
yeah, but by the same token, to get to another galaxy here at warp 9.6, it's 1,000 years. So,
Yeah.
it's they've kind of set their limits, right? It's like the galaxy is it, is kind of their setting.
Yeah, whenever I see science fiction that talks about the universe as opposed to the galaxy, I get a
Mhm.
little bit I get a little itch in my because people don't writers I sometimes don't understand how big the galaxy is and how big the universe is and how much as big as the galaxy is, getting to another galaxy is
Right. Yeah.
infinitely more difficult than just going into our own galaxy.
Right. Right. And Manchester was mentioned there is it warp 2 twice speed light. No, it's even in the old days it was a exponential system, and now it's
Yeah,
more
so
of a
it's cubed system, right? So warp factor
originally.
2 is 2 times 2 times 2, so that's eight times the speed of light on the chart here on the original from the original series. Yeah,
Right.
but it's now fast. We can go faster now with in the next generation. Or I think they don't actually explain it, Cam. Right? They just sort of retcon it and say, oh, now
Well,
we're going to
actually,
do this.
you're saying why the scale changed?
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Uh,
just saying, is they actually retcon it, or are they're saying
no,
that there's more powerful drives? They just sort of retcon it.
I believe it is. I can't quote it, but I believe it is in the technical manual where it talks about that they did change the scale in universe, to deal with that. So it's not just they said, oh no, it's kind of this. I mean, they did obviously that it was a retcon, but within the universe, they actually changed the way that they deal with it as well. Okay.
Right.
You might want to, I mean, this might be a good time to talk about the other propulsion things as well, because, you hear in Star Trek, they talk about impulse drive, for example.
Right.
Impulse drive is a sublight speed. And just, again, in the next generation era. So if they say full impulse, that's basically 1/4 C, 1/4 of the speed of light.
Right.
Now, theoretically, impulse drive can go faster than that, but they avoid that because once you start moving at near relativistic speeds, it messes up your time frame and everything. And they have actually dealt with that on a few episodes of Star Trek. There was something where I don't they got thrown something at a faster speed, sub warp speed or something, and it was actually kind of a deception thing. But Data mentions in it, he's like, we need to reset the clocks to starbase whatever because we moved at this relativistic speed for a short period of time or whatever. And it's like, okay, and they just said sure, do it. But he was actually covering up some sort of thing, like it was a whole mystery. But so that is an issue in the Star Trek universe.
Well, yeah, relativity doesn't just disappear with
right. Yeah, exactly. And so they don't
speeds.
Right. They don't hand wave that away. It is part of the Star Trek universe. So, but impulse drive is it's not like I have been able to dig into it. It's not exactly because they still have RCS, reaction control. I forget what the S stands for, but basically thrusters that do.
Yeah. So there's 3 types of engines in Star Trek, right?
Yeah, right. It's basically
warp drive is for going above the speed of light. Impulse is for booting around solar systems, because if you use warp drive, you might have difficulty, getting close to because you're going so fast. You might have. I mean, that's what I assumed, right? Like, usually they seem to, stop warp, and they stop warp drive near towards a planet, and then they don't.
Right, and that's it. See, that's a little confusing to me because sometimes they're like, "Oh yeah, we don't use warp inside a system," but they must because, this whole idea that if you're going even at, I mean, even if you're warp 1 to cross the solar system is 11 hours, so you're moving at quarter that speed. That would take you a long time, so it's like, oh, we're gonna get to Earth. It's like, well, okay, we entered the system. Now it's gonna take us 4 days to get to Earth. Obviously, they don't do that, but yes, they probably don't come right up to a planet like in Force Awakens, dropping out of hyperspace, as they're entering an atmosphere or something. They don't do that.
Yeah, you think there'd be some difficulties with navigation trying to.
But I mean,
going so fast.
Even the solar system, which is relatively dense, right, in terms of matter, is very empty. But of course, space between is even less empty. But the other thing that I thought we might want to mention here, and again, I'm not sure how much I can go into it, but it's the whole idea of the deflector system and navigational shields and things like that. Because if you have ever looked into real space travel and things, like the odds, if we were to try and send a ship from here to Alpha Centauri, it would likely not make it because it would impact something. Even though space is very, very low density, there are particles in space, and just the amount of time you're going and the speeds, even if you're going, let's say, quarter light speed, if you get impacted by
that's very fast.
Right. If you get impacted by a relatively small molecule, just do the math on that. It's bad news, and it would essentially destroy most ships. So there was something I was watching, Real Space Thing. It's like if you wanted to try and get a probe, not even considering sending people, it would basically be like an arrow. It's like something that's very small frontal area to try to avoid that. So, and that exists in Star Trek too. Is what they have. So they have the navigational deflector, which in the original series it's weird, it's strange. And I'm not sure if they retconned that or whatever, but if you look at the original Enterprise, it has like a dish, like a radar dish on the front, or an antenna dish.
Yeah.
And then when the movies came around, it's like a blue glowing, concave kind of thing, which is the deflector dish. And same thing with Next Generation. They have this kind of glowing thing at the front is the deflector dish. Now, the deflector dish it basically is an electromagnetic field that is pushing objects out of the way so they don't run into these things. So they're essentially clearing the space in front of them as well. And I have to think about how that works at warp, but it's certainly important when they're moving at impulse speeds. Maybe the warp, I don't remember if the warp field does something for that too. But so it is one of these things that they're trying to deal with, actual physics to some degree.
Yeah. So the problem is micrometeors, right? There's there's not, space is mostly empty, but chances are, the longer you go, you're going to hit one, and it's going to go through your ship, and it could kill somebody. It can hurt some, we have this.
It's punching a hole in the ship. Also,
it could be. That's the problem. It could hit something that's important.
Like the International Space Station has the same problem. And it's moving at very slow speeds relative to these other things. But you're moving at 30,000 miles an hour, and you hit something the size of an M&M. It's like a bomb.
Yeah. So the navigational array, the deflector. The shields are essentially they start out as simply a way to defend yourselves against micrometeors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're expanded from that. I think so. I believe that the ship it basically always has a shield up because of the navigation or the deflector dish deflecting these, in a sense, these micrometeors. I've heard about it talked in our own time here for real. Having to concern ourselves about that, and it kind of limits the speeds that we can go to, even if, like you said, if you were to, if we were to have a sort of, if you were to put a nuclear, if energy wasn't a problem, put a nuclear reactor on a spaceship and slowly accelerate up to, close to the speed of light or anywhere near it, you'd start to have these problems without some sort of way to deflect these micrometeors.
Right. And actually, in an episode of Star Trek, they came upon some alien race, a ship, and they mentioned it had like lasers or something. And I don't remember who it was. It was Riker or somebody said that won't even penetrate our navigational shields. And so that's what you're talking about, is that, there are shields that they have up to prevent hazards. It's a much lower power than the things they use for defending against weapons.
Yeah, it wouldn't. Totally different.
I can give you a quick blurb here on impulse engines, if you like.
Yeah, I see them as thrusters are simply that's like, you're in space dock, right? You're moving your stuff, to make sure you don't hit. You can't, you've got to have something in between. Like, hey, we're going to go from this planet to this moon, and it's, we could warp, but it's going to be difficult. We have to have something in between. So that's what impulse are. Yeah. Give us how do they work?
Yeah, this is from this article's on a variety of propulsion systems, and the impulse ones. It's less detailed than the technical manual, but basically it says impulse engines of the Starfleet vessels are fusion powered. They have two primary functions, both of which are shared with the warp engine. They propel the ship through space and supply power to the ship systems. Impulse engines propel ships at sublight speeds. During normal operations, full impulse is 1/4 light speed. And then they talk about problems if they go over that. having to do with engine efficiency and things like that. And then they talk about how it's normally used within a solar system or regions of space that cause trouble um, with warp fields and all that. And then they get into some of the they have some nice diagrams on all this where it's deuterium fuel essentially that how they create the vectored thrust and all that. I guess it is still a thruster. There is an exhaust that causes the thrust. It's just different from different method to achieve that, which is far more powerful than the reaction control systems.
Yeah.
And just not really what we're talking about, but in this thing they talk about these other things that have appeared in Star Trek. Soliton wave, that was a next generation thing. Transwarp corridors, which is the way the Borg travel around. And
which are
I don't know
kind
if
of like
anybody
wormholes.
right.
In
And I
a
don't
way.
yeah, I don't remember if anybody recalls Star Trek 3, which with first appearance of the Excelsior, which had a transwarp drive. That was a thing that they eventually abandoned in the Star Trek universe. It didn't work out. But then they also have a subspace catapult, and quantum slipstream.
Yeah,
So those are just
those
some
are from
things that
Voyager.
most of those are from Voyager because they, of course, Voyager was trying to make it across from the Delta Quadrant back to the Alpha Quadrant.
Yeah. So, is warp drive real? 1994, there's a scientist, Alcubierre. He proposed um, uh, not moving, not a spaceship, but space itself, moving it faster than light. All that were required would be to this is a theory here in physics. You'd need to distort the fabric of space-time into a bubble surrounding a spaceship. Enormous energy would be required, but once you create the bubble, it would move independently of the rest of the universe. Um, you know, it could move faster than light. So that's the theory that he's come up with. Um, yeah, Alcubierre is his name, Miguel Alcubierre. The bubble would move by compressing space-time in front of it and expanding it behind it. So that's the theory. Of course, we can't do that. And also, there's a NASA scientist that believes we have some sort of there's some sort of undiscovered negative energy that could be used to create this space warp bubble, using a smaller amount of energy than they think is possible. Of course, this is all theory, and yeah, this is kind of science and reflects science fiction and vice versa.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, go ahead.
That's it.
All right, let's talk about the transporters.
Okay. So there's a couple. I did read up on this a bit. It's kind of complex because it's not real, of course, but the idea with transporters isn't is that they're physically transforming you or whatever it is they're transporting into an energy beam and putting that reconstituting you wherever it is that they're sending it. So and so it's matter energy conversion process, and then of course energy to matter. So that's the basis of it. And I wish PB was here because we could be talking about this, but the issue was whether replicators are the same thing or not, and I did find a few references to that. And so we should talk about transporters and replicators together here, I think, because
we should. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, we could go into one or the other, but this is where we started out. So, according to the Star Trek technical manual, replicator systems, it says transporter based replicators. That's how they describe it. I guess I could read a short paragraph here, just if we want to nerd out. Okay, this is in section 7.6 under auxiliary. I guess it's under auxiliary systems or something. Okay, so it says recent advances in transporter-based molecular synthesis have resulted in a number of significant spin-off technologies. Chief among these are transporter-based replicators. These devices permit replication of virtually any inanimate object with incredible fidelity and relatively low energy cost. And then it goes on to say there are two main replication systems on board the Enterprise, but this is not just the Enterprise; it's general. There are food synthesizers and hardware replicators. Food replicators are optimized for a finer degree of resolution because of the necessity of accuracy replicating chemical composition of foodstuffs. Hardware replicators, on the other hand, are generally tuned to a lower resolution for greater energy efficiency and lower memory matrix requirements. So, in throughout the whole thing, they talk about there's a couple major issues with that, and that is, well, okay. The first thing is, it's not a pure energy based thing. So they're not just powering a replicator and creating matter from energy conversion. I guess that's theoretically possible, but it's massively massive energy expenditure to do that. So basically, they're taking some kind of mass stock, and then they reconstitute it in whatever is asked for.
This for food replicators or for
both.
both?
And again, this is in common with transporters too. In the case of transporters, they're taking your body, transforming it into an energy stream, and then reconstituting it. So it is your, there's the question, well, is it you? Is it not you? Whatever. And no, from the basics, it is still you. You're literally being broken down into a matter stream and then beamed, via energy to wherever it is you're going. Good on that, or you wanted to discuss that?
No. I mean, I agree. That's technically what it's doing.
Yeah.
The question is when it takes you apart into your component parts. I mean, the ethical, the moral, are you? And then you're put back together.
Well, okay. Star Trek is
how does your soul know to connect to your?
But, Star Trek is atheistic. At the bottom line,
generally, yes.
It is not a. It does. I don't think that it forwards the concept of having a soul. I mean, I guess you can just say, well, that's the concept here, and set it aside. I'm sure someone could come up and say, okay, but your soul is beyond your body, and even though you move your body here, your soul isn't constrained by physics, so it goes to where it's supposed to be. You could make up any kind of explanation you wanted, I suppose. So to jump back to replicators for a second, it's doing the same thing, except it is, instead of taking whatever this goo is that they use to feed the replicators, and they made a mention that it starts out with some sort of sterilized matter, that is easy to transform into whatever you want. But you can also take all recycled matter of all kinds, waste, etc., or a pile of garbage, whatever you wanted, and you could replicate that, or you use it in a replicator, because they're breaking it down at the molecular level at a minimum. Now they also make a distinction in transporters. You have quantum level transporters and molecular level transporters. I'm saying that a little bit crudely. They might discuss it in a little more detail, but essentially for living beings, they use quantum level. So it takes more energy and more computer power to do so. Because a living thing is more complex than a non-living thing, essentially. But a cargo transporter, for example, would be typically set to be working on this molecular level, so it's much more crude. Obviously, it's not. Let's say they're transporting a complex steel alloy or something.
Right.
It's it's way above the level of complexity that is. So it's not like, oh, it's weakening the steel or something like that. But a lump of complex steel is a lot less complicated than a living being. So that's kind of how they, hand wave around that. And so it's, obviously the more mass, it's more energy you need, and the more computing power, because, essentially they're, um, analyzing you down to the quantum level when they do these transports. And there's other little details, like things like they have the biofilter. So let's say, you went down for an away mission and you picked up some alien disease. The transporters have built-in functions, so they would eliminate those things. And
Right.
They've had things in the show where, like, somebody has a weapon, and it's like, yeah, we could deactivate in the transport. They could basically alter it as they're transporting you. And there's also, there's only a certain amount of time. They say 420 seconds basically that you can remain in the buffer before it starts to degrade. But then, we saw the episode where Scotty showed up in, Relics in Next Generation, where he somehow tricked the system
50
into,
years or something.
it was even longer than that. I think it was like 70 years or something. But in that same episode, there were two survivors, Scotty and the other guy. And the other guy, it didn't work for the other guy. They did lose the signal, and he just, failed to exist. Now there and anything you write in something like this, a technical manual, a writer will come by and screw it up, right? So they've got the same show has where the Thomas Riker incident, right? Did you ever see this episode?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Great episode.
Yeah, not bad. But the story behind that is that he was, when he was a young lieutenant or something, he was on an away mission, and he was the last one being beamed up, and there was some sort of storm, and the transporter chief did something where he basically copied the signal to try and make sure that they got through this.
Yeah,
And
he
so
had a degraded signal or something, and he had to
right, and so they got
something
right, and they got him back. But what they didn't know is the other signal was reflected back by the energy field or whatever, the storm, reflected back, and then reconstituted him on the planet as well. Now, this this brings up the question of, well, where did the extra matter come from? Because and like I said, this is a problem. You have a writer that's like, oh, cool story, we're going to do this, which, yeah, it's cool, but they have within their lore, or within their their background information, that, yeah, it takes an immense amount of energy to do that, to create this additional matter. And unless I don't think they said, like, oh yeah, it took matter from this thing or whatever, and rebuilt it. So that's kind of a plot hole, but that's fine. So
okay, here's my thing with the whole transporters and replicators thing. Now, I know we had a big discussion last week, and it's like, oh no, it's you gotta have some matter for replicators and that kind of stuff. Well, in my limited research, I didn't find anywhere where it said specifically that you have to have that replicators, for example, have to have matter. You can use energy. You can simply use energy to, and it's expensive, like you said, to create matter. It is complete a matter energy conversion. And even when it talked about using the waste of the ship and other matter on the ship, they talked about recycling it, right?
Mhm.
And so but they didn't say that let's say if you had a plastic toy and okay, let's recycle it, put it in the replicator, and they didn't talk about that somehow that plastic or whatever the item was made of, whether it was organic or whatever, it was kept separately. They just mentioned that it would then be converted into energy, and that energy would be used later on to create more matter. So from what I read, there's this, like I said, we had this big discussion about whether replicators need some sort of organic goo or something like that to make to replicate. Now, I would agree that it would probably be less energy dependent if you had something like that in order to make, to help make your food or whatever it was. But I don't think it's a requirement. I think that as long as you have enough power in the ship, you can create, whatever it is that, whatever matter that you want. And, as I said, there doesn't appear to be, necessarily a separate storage system per se for let's keep this, organic goo here and that's, help us to make food, that sort of thing. Now, admittedly, things change. In the original series, they weren't, replicators are getting better by, next generation. Everybody's replicating everything, it seems, right? Picard, doesn't, he's like more than happy to just get his tea from the replicator instead of making it himself or anything. But it's in the original series, it's a little more, they seem to be eating food, and they maybe have a chef. The replicators, as Outpost Nurse says, replicators have limits, and they seem to be much more limited in the original series when it comes to food and that sort of thing. Now, there are some limits on creating very complicated materials, so much that you can't just have a really big replicator and just like replicate a starship. There's something about feel free to jump in, Cam. Something about industrial replicators, but you would still, if you're building a starship, you would still, you could replicate, certain sized pieces of the hull, or, perhaps certain electronics that would then have to be put together, or that kind of thing. You could, replicate the core, some of the core materials, but you wouldn't just replicate a starship, normally speaking. Now, I would kind of, you remember Terminator 2? Where they ask, what can the liquid metal do? Oh, simple things like, stabbing weapons, that kind of thing. But it couldn't make something complicated like a bomb. I kind of see it in that way, very roughly. And also, I would have to agree here with Outpost Nerd. There's certain things that are very technical that can't be replicated. Like, I don't think you can replicate dilithium. Latinum cannot be replicated, it says there in the show. Now, I think that's purely because then the Ferengi would just, replicate all the latinum.
Well, of course, latinum was created.
It wouldn't mean anything.
Latinum was created, though, because they made the mistake of saying that you can replicate gold. So, the gold pressed latinum became the new thing you can't replicate.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of, hand waving there, but that's fine. It's in the universe. Yeah. And here's another good point: is replicated food and real food taste different. There's a lot of, that's often said in Star Trek, and like, oh, we're gonna have a real steak or something like that. So there is some sort of, difference. It isn't exact. There is some stuff about a copy of food, food replicators being a copy and not being necessarily a exact copy somehow.
Yeah, it's okay. So, in terms of the copying, it's I was looking into this a little bit, and there's a difference between ideal Trek and then people that say no, we don't like that, and I guess so you could look between let's say Roddenberry, purist Roddenberry, and Next Generation, especially Deep Space Nine kind of era stuff, right? Is where I would say pure Trek would be like, yes, we could do this, and yeah, we can make gold, and no one cares because we don't have money anymore, and da 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 da. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then, but then it's like, well, we can't do dilithium because dilithium is a resource that we still want to fight over, So then that starts to kind of fall apart, and then the same thing, with the food. It's like Benjamin Sisko's dad owns a restaurant, and it's like, that replicated crap, And I mean, there was a scene with Troy when she's talking about, oh, I want real chocolate, I don't want replicated chocolate, and I think it's a good scene because she puts it kind of, and this is a rare thing where I like Troy very little, but she's like, the perfect perfectly created and copied whatever, and someone else said, well, yeah, because real food is never exactly perfect. It always it's like, yeah, you're preparing it in a certain way. It's a little bit more this or a little bit more that, or you have a little bit more butter, or a little bit more seasoning, whatever, and people in humans are able to enjoy those things, whereas the replicated stuff, it's all perfect because it's all like
Mm.
textbook. So
It's the uncanny valley
yeah,
in a
that
sense.
yeah, that kind of thing. So, and that makes sense to me. It's like, yeah, it's good. It's like oh yeah, it tastes like chocolate. But it's like, is it really though? And then you had the same thing in the episode Relics, where Scotty was having synthahol. The first time he had synthahol, which is basically fake alcohol. That you don't really get drunk off of it, or you can like shake it off or whatever. Um,
Yeah, I read somewhere that it says that they can't replicate alcohol,
they can. Um,
like real alcohol.
they can. They just don't, because they don't want a
Oh,
bunch of drunk people on ships. Um, so that's what synthahol is. It's supposed to be, give you the same taste and apparent effect of alcohol without it being permanent. Um, now, okay. Now, as to your point regarding, oh yeah, Outpost Nerd mentions about the Picard winery. That's his brother was also a hardliner on that. It's like, you don't want, he grew actual grapes and made real wine. So it is this kind of thing. It's where there is this counterculture, I guess, that doesn't want the replicated stuff. It's
yeah,
um, and you can see
but
that, well, we're
you
dealing with
have to
that with
take
AI
those.
too, right? Real
Yeah,
art versus
exactly.
AI art.
Yeah, and you got to take those comments with a little bit of grain of salt when his brother is giving him shit for, oh yeah, I mean, he's taking the piss out of it a little bit, right? Like, it may or may not be completely true. It's something that he tells them to be. Oh yeah, it's because of this. And it doesn't
Well,
mean it's
yeah,
100% true.
all of these things are subject to whatever that writer is and gets away with, right? Um, so you never know. That's the thing. It's like you come up with this and a writer just tramples it, and they let them, and then suddenly that's canon, right? But in terms of your belief about the replication systems, I don't think that it is well founded. Um, Again, theoretically, you could
My belief
yes,
is
you
not well
you
founded.
could produce something from energy, but it's just the it's massive amount of energy that would be required for something small.
Okay,
So
but
it's
here's the
it's
thing.
just not efficient.
Here's the thing. I mean, the transporter is doing exactly that. It's taking your molecules, turning them into energy, beaming into another place, and then bringing them back as energy into those molecules. Why would it be any harder if you took, a you know a pound of iron ore versus something else and turned it into energy? Once it's energy, it's energy. It's
Where are you
not
storing the
like,
energy?
well, wherever in a battery, wherever you're storing it.
Okay, but that means you have to have a battery that's capable of storing that
No, I
immense amount of
understand that,
energy.
but I'm saying that once it's energy, it's energy. Like, energy is not out there. Hey, I'm energy that used to be an apple. I'm energy that used to be an orange. Like, I'm
Right.
energy that used to be a shoe. Like, energy wouldn't care what it used to be. It's now energy, and then you make it into something else again. So, from
Well,
my view, it doesn't make sense that, you know, if you're taking my body and turning it into energy, that energy could go anywhere. You could be using, energy from, the warp core, or from, I could be eating Fred in my if I make that energy used to be Fred, but they use different energy to put him on the planet, and now that the energy that used to be Fred is now going into my burger that I'm having, right? Like, doesn't matter. It's just energy.
yeah.
That's kind of how I see it. So I don't see why it makes sense within the universe to say, okay, well, I mean, I understand it is, like I said before, making something out of pure energy might be more expensive energy wise than if you had a piece of organic matter and you used it to, you use that to help in some sort of process. But once everything's converted to energy, then matter what it was before. I mean, you might
Well,
get more
it
energy
doesn't.
from a certain thing, right? Like, I might get, more energy from this apple versus this, desk lamp or something, right? Depending
No,
on its
I
size and
don't.
what it's made of. But
Probably not. Because again, the energy we're talking about there is more like a nuclear reaction. Within it, it's not like, oh, I'm burning this fuel versus this fuel. It's
okay,
not on that level. You know what I'm saying?
you wouldn't
It's
say, like, I'm not a physicist, but you wouldn't say that denser matter would have bonds that would be tighter,
it
that
might
might
it,
give
it
us
might.
more energy when I break the bond between this dense atom versus some atom with like an atom of air.
Yeah,
You
I'm
know,
not sure exactly what it is, but the only point I'm trying to make is it's not analogous to burning it, or as something like that. It's analogous to a uh, destruction of matter and converting it to energy. But so it's not that you're. Yeah, I guess there could be different amounts, but all I'm saying is
are
what.
there different types of energy? I mean, there are different types of energy, but aren't
Well,
they?
sure.
What's the big difference between them? Is how much actual, energy, or how much something you can heat up or
Well,
whatever
okay,
within
that's a
them
question
versus
too.
something else,
Well,
right?
let me suggest the following: is so you're saying, oh, I have this whatever matter, and oh, I want to convert that to energy, and then at some later date, I'll use it to make into an
Something else,
apple, an apple, let's say,
whatever,
right?
doesn't matter.
Well,
Yeah,
okay, th- that's so you have to have perfect containment of that energy, whatever form it is, and the type of energy it is well, first of all, every time that you transfer energy, you're losing. We have entropy essentially, for lack of a better term. Every reaction you have, you're losing. You can only go down. You can never regain um, what there is. So it, this is not exactly correct, but when you convert fuel into electricity, you're not getting you're getting very little out of that. If you're
yeah.
transferring electricity to a different
I
voltage
know we,
electricity.
we lose energy transferring it to power lines, etc. Yeah,
Right. And again, storing energy is not easy.
no, for
Uh,
sure.
so it's again, theoretically, what you're saying is, yeah, let's say you converted something to energy and then you wanted to store it and then later use it to replicate, to produce a replicated good. Um, uh, and but again, just that storage process is not 100%. And then presumably you can have some losses over that time, and again, it would have to be immense. I don't think you're taking into account the scale here in the Star Trek universe of things.
No, well, I'm
um
assuming that they have that the reactors that they have, the warp drive, all that stuff is enough to deal with what however much
oh,
energy it puts out is enough to
oh,
to deal with what they have to do, because we have to, otherwise.
okay,
Yeah,
I think you I think you're incorrect because of scale. The warp core, even though it's producing an immense amount of energy, it producing a relatively small amount of matter from energy. Again, think of it the other way. You could take a very small nuclear reaction, and you're producing an immense amount of energy from a tiny amount of mass. So look at it backwards, right? You go, if you have to have that massive amount of energy to produce a tiny amount of mass. So
right.
it's just not there. Okay, so in this it talks about um, raw food stock material is an organic particulate suspension. Da, 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 that's the way that they transmute it. But then they're talking about they go into all of this in some detail. Now, where I think
Okay, let me
maybe.
let me ask you a question though about the
Yeah, okay.
transporters based on entropy, right? So if the transporter zaps me into energy,
Mhm.
then there's going to be some energy loss, right? So when I get zapped down to the planet and I'm being brought back into, the state that I originally was in, there's going to have to add some energy, because there's going to be some energy loss between, even, beaming me from what's the transporters? Oh, they have a range 16,000 miles. So beaming me from the Earth's atmosphere down to the planet, there's going to be some loss over that 16,000 miles, right? So I'm never the same person I am. There's going to have to add energy
Well,
to get me
okay.
down there in full, or I'm going to be missing an arm or something.
So there's various hand wavium that goes on in this. Now, before I get into that, the same issue exists, right? Because a human is relatively large amount of mass, right? If you were to convert a human into energy, again, we were talking breaking these nuclear bonds and all this stuff.
Yeah,
it's an immense amount. Just the same. So what I was saying, you have to have all this storage capacity. Well, you at least have to have that in the transporter system for a short period of time, right? So those would have to be a massive amount of very temporary storage.
the transporter buffer must be pretty big.
Well, yeah, and now it's a designated system, and it is going from here to there. So I'd have to study a little more about it, how they justify that, but it's kind of in process. It's not sitting there storing it for any amount of time.
No, but it has to be stored for some amount of time.
Right. So yeah, that's it. It might not all add up. I'm not saying it does.
Well, I mean, those are good things because they have, you've got the transporter pad. It's got six, 6 spaces on it in the original 6 or 8 or whatever it had. Mm-hmm. And I mean, next generation kind of gets over that because then you've got multiple transporter rooms. You've got, massive, you can transport people in the cargo bay. But at least originally they put some limits on how many people you can beam at once, which makes sense based on how you've described the system, right, Cam? So you can't just let's
take
the entire planet and let's beam 8 billion people to from point A to point B.
Not only that, this is something that's relatively well established, and there is, the transporter system can't just cycle infinitely. It has a cooldown period essentially. So, for example, with the Enterprise, they have emergency transporters and regular transporters and cargo transporter and all these things, and they can only they have numbers. It's like we could transport this many people an hour, for example. It's not infinite.
We have to evacuate the planet. We can only transport this many people to the ship in this amount of time. So we have a problem.
Yeah, and it's relatively long. It's like a transporter cycle is like something like a 87-second cooldown or something. It's not tiny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's pretty significant. And again, bearing in mind that transporting a living being is very taxing compared to transporting equipment. So it just takes way more memory, way more energy to do than if you were to transport a 200 kilogram block of wood or something.
Right. Of course.
So, it works for storytelling purposes that they have these limits on things, right? Because you don't just want to go crazy. And so I can't say that everything lines up and it's like, yep, it all makes perfect sense, but generally it's established that you're not just producing things from energy. That's pretty consistent. Now, when you get to Discovery or something, I can't speak to that and I don't really care, but
yeah, well, that's not canon anyway. Yeah. Though I will mention I've been watching Starfleet Academy because Mad Men made me do it. Mm-hmm. But there is some. It's funny because the original Star Trek, you've got the the noise that the transporter makes, and it's like 5 seconds, 7 seconds, or something that they're in between states and they're coming up. And as you go along, it seems to get faster, especially in the 32nd century. You've got people they're basically blipping out. You're like poof, poof, poof. They're disappearing and reappearing. It's not the same. The way that the transporters originally worked. Now, you can say, well, it's 1,000 years in the future or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of interesting aspect of it.
Yeah.
I blame you.
Okay.
Making me watch that show at Mad.
Do you care to hear what it says about the food replicator system, or are you going to take my word for it?
No. Sure, if you want to. Sure, if you want to take your word for it, but the whole. So, are you saying that they have to have the food replicator does have
It definitely
organic
does.
material.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the short version. Is it does, and it's because it's because of the the energy
Okay. So
necessary.
it could do it without organic material.
Theoretically, if you just had a stream of infinite energy, they
Yeah.
could do that. But they also mention here, like for replicators, for example, it's and this is where it would come in with the transporter, because the transporters have the subsystems where they basically scan someone as part of the transporting thing, and because again, keep in mind they get one little bit off and your DNA is screwed, right?
Yeah.
It's
You
like
could. Yeah. Yeah.
it's like getting radiation damage to your body.
Yeah. They could, I mean, you get a certain piece missing out of you. It could be very bad.
Right. And we've seen this, like in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, that something went
Yeah.
wrong, and
Yep.
it's like, well, what came through didn't live long. Is what they said.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, right, exactly. But they mentioned it, so it's not just the energy; it's the computing power as well, because they said even a simple, what do they say here? Even a simple pattern for food, which isn't living at that point, is an immense amount of data. So a living being, so they can't like just. I think this might have come up somewhere. It's like, well, why don't they just transport everyone and they just hold their patterns? It's just like, oh, we just recorded you, so if anything ever happens to you, we just basically make a clone.
Being you
Well,
back. Yeah.
you can't. It's just there's practical limit to that. But again, it's like, oh, so you can send six, you can send six people down at once. You got enough memory for that. Well, but so you can't store that memory. You see what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah.
what if you just wanted to save it for six people? You got enough to do that, right? It's like, well, no.
Yeah. No one else could transport after that, but
Yeah, so
yeah.
again, nothing is perfect in this, but
Yeah.
that's
Now,
where they're at.
yeah. Now, the only problem I would have with your, you have, I mean, I agree that it might be easier using you having organic material, for your replicators. The only thing is I've never seen anybody ever doing anything to the replicator to refill those things, or you ever see someone go into, is there some sort of, some guy's got there's a big bin in the crew mess, and he's filling it with like gray goop that is used for the replicators or something.
Well, I will
But
tell you what.
that's the only thing, that's the only, like, I agree with you, and it kind of makes sense within the, but we've never seen that. I mean, maybe
Okay,
it's not like
I have an answer for you.
that
It
we
says,
have seen it. I just haven't seen it.
well, it says the raw food stock is normally replaced as Starbase resupply. Osmotic and electrolytic fractioning of wastewater allows up to 82% of food stock to be reclaimed and reused.
So I'm eating my own
In a
poop.
shortage,
What you're
yes,
telling me?
exactly. Yes, raw food stock can be replaced from general raw stock or waste material, but the energy cost is correspondingly higher, so the practice is to be avoided. So, what they're
All right,
providing in
that makes
terms
sense.
of the supply is kind of made to be easily converted.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas you can do it again. This is kind of what you're talking about. It's like, yeah, can I do it for me? So basically, oh, I want to convert a protein into a steak. Okay, well, that's relatively easy. Okay, well, now I want
right.
to convert a piece of wood into a steak. Can you do it? Yeah, but it's harder to do. Okay,
Yeah,
now
that
I
makes
want to do
sense.
it from pure energy. Well, it's even harder to do. So
In Enterprise, yeah, the thing with the older shows, that's so I mean, these aren't perfected as yet, and I'd expect that, I mean, we see people eating in the mess, and they've got to cook, on
mhm.
Enterprise and stuff. So the captain's having his special dinners, and cook made us this, and sit at the captain's table, and he's
Right.
entertaining guests. And you
Well,
might assume that there would be some raw food stocks, the Wagyu beef, so that Obama can entertain the chief of the king of Siam or whatever, right?
right.
That kind of thing. So
Sure.
you could see that.
Yeah, and in the original series, they had food dispensers that were kind of like replicators, and they did at times. It's like, oh, here you put this in, this data thing, and it tells you what you want, and they make it. So it was like a kind of a proto replicator. Um, uh, or maybe like a super ingredient, that you could easily combine or something like that. So anyway, have we beat that one to death?
Yeah. Hello to everyone. Just so I don't forget anybody. I'm not trying to snub anybody by not saying hello. If I miss you, I apologize.
It says we only got 8 people. You can't say hello to 8 people.
Can't miss. I
Got
can't.
Hoot Owl.
Hello, everybody.
Got James. Got Outpost Nerd.
Hey, hello to everybody. Hello to Jeff. Hello to Outpost Nerd, James, Hoot Owl, Madman. Who did I miss? Neutron. Who's listening earlier? Yeah. All right. I think that's everybody. That is
okay. From now on, I'm out in the wilderness because the replicators and the propulsion systems are all that I had a chance to dig into deeply.
All right. Well, let's talk about shields.
Okay.
They're pretty. We kind of going over these. Invisible defensive barriers activated automatically by the ship's computer. They can be maintained continually for 20 hours while the ship's power is exhausted. Transporters cannot be used when the shields are enveloping the ship. So these are just like standard energy shields that you would see in any type of sci-fi. I don't think there's anything too special about the ones from Star Trek, Cam, except of course for the navigational portion of it. Would you agree with that? What do you?
Well, I'm just perusing here. The deflector shields is the section they have here. It's relatively short.
Yeah, they're pretty basic. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, that limits of replicators as well. Neelix cooks everything on Voyager. Yeah, they have energy limits on Voyager, energy problems. So that's what they do with that, and it makes sense based on what Cam has just said. If they're they're not going back to the starbase, they're not getting their gray goo, whatever it is that they're using to help refill the replicators, the whole convert this protein into some other protein. So yeah, that makes sense. So it works in Voyager's sense. Okay, sorry. Go back to screens. Shields are not automatically activated. These say that they're activated automatically by the ship's computer. I think they're meaning automatically when you say you press on the button, I guess, and the shields, the computer knows how to set them up. But I don't know if that's what they mean. So Cam, you're looking up shields? There's different ways I've seen in science fiction of developing shields. They talk about shield projectors. They don't have it's not like there's this one giant thing in the center of the ship and it goes poof and then it puts a shield out, right? Because that's why you can have your forward shields and your our rear shields are at 40% or whatever. So it should be that there are various projectors around the ship at certain places, and they're putting out an energy field, and those are overlapping each other, right?
Yes. So in again for the Enterprise here, they talk about they're showing these different field generators. They have, there's some on the pylons, there's some on the in the cells, there's several on the saucer section, several on the engineering section. I don't have an exact count here, but probably 8. They do talk about cruise mode, where they're putting numbers to this and everything. I'm not sure if this is at all, but how they cycle and all these different things, and then heat dissipation from them is kind of what the limiting factor is. I think in most of it, is that it can only absorb so much energy, which is whatever the form is, it's converting it to heat essentially.
Yeah. So you're by damaging they're being able to deflect a certain amount of energy. So how much energy you're putting into the shield is damaging. It's using its energy to counteract that, and it's going off in heat. So that's what's lowering your shield capacity.
And it does. Sorry, about the navigational thing in cruise mode here. They talk about they're running at about 5% of their maximum. Which would be their typical.
Really
flying around.
I would think you'd even need less than that but yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah. It says 5% of the rated output.
Yeah, there's awesome ways. There's many different ways. How much maximum rating you could put out versus the recharge rate, all kinds of stuff like that.
Well, we've also seen there's been various episodes where they have specific shielding, like when they're flying close to a star or something, where they the way that works. There was an episode with where Crusher was in charge for some
Yeah,
reason,
yeah.
and there was a whole thing where they were dealing with these specific kinds of shield, like a scientist or something that was dealing with.
Did he invent a new type of shielding, or
Yeah,
they were?
Yeah, it was something like that.
And it was perfect. It was specifically for deflecting the heat of a star, right? So they could get closer to the star.
Yeah, and I think that was I'm trying to remember if that was two different episodes where they called back to that, because I think there was an episode where Crusher was at some kind of research thing that it was like a mystery thing, and there happened to be a researcher there for that. And then the one when she was in command, it was like, oh, I remember this. It's something that she had been tangentially involved in, and they had. So it was like, oh, we should try to apply this, tune our shields to use that technology. Is the way I recall it going down.
Yeah. So I mean, they fit whatever they need to when they want to, but I mean that you could see that there might be different shields tuned to different weapon systems or etc. Right? That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and they talk here about how warp affects it and all that different stuff. So, and
I think shields are pretty basic.
Well, they are, I guess, they're in a lot of different things, but I think in Star Wars they have different things. They have ray shielding and not ray shielding. I forget what the one.
Well, that was relatively new though. That was like
no, in original Star Wars they mentioned
they had ray shielding,
that the exhaust port was ray shielded, which is why they had to use proton torpedoes, not photon torpedoes, proton torpedoes.
Yeah. Star Trek uses proton
torpedoes. So that was the very first Star Wars.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's right.
Nerd.
Yeah. All right.
But they also, I like how they deal with shield, like again with the Borg and stuff, where it's like the Borg are doing certain there's other weapons too, like the Jem'Hadar. That was a really cool episode when they went into the Cisco and Quark got kidnapped or something, or abducted, and they sent a group in to try and get them back, and they took a Galaxy class ship, the Odyssey. And some of the runabouts to try and track them down, and they came across these Jem'Hadar ships, and the Jem'Hadar ships just like blasted right through their shields like it wasn't there with their Polaron weapons or whatever they were using. And it's like, oh crap, it's like this, our armor just was completely ineffective.
I think that in the similar to that in the Voyager, the Year of Hell episode, they had some sort of the time guy with his time weapons were coming through the shields as well, because they're out of phase somehow with time, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and then the same thing with the Borg. It's like they do whatever, and they part of the thing is they keep on trying to adjust it so they can't, because the Borg like we're able to okay, it's at this frequency, we're going through it, and that was also in Generations too, is where they had this rather stupid, I don't know, where they basically they were able to see what the Enterprise's shields were at, what operating frequency, and then they just were able to bypass it because it's like whatever they were using was ineffective, and that's how they blew up the Enterprise.
You'd think that they started later on they'd bring in this whole shield harmonics sort of thing,
right?
There's some sort of vibrational or resonant frequency or something that you're at, and that if you knew that frequency would just completely. Now, I mean, there's something analogous in that now to in encrypted communications, right? You've got frequency hopping, so I don't understand why they wouldn't have in the 23rd century you wouldn't have some sort of, if you have if that's how your shields work, shield harmonics, that kind of thing, you wouldn't have some sort of frequency hopping thing, so your shield would be constantly changing its harmonics. And I think you see some
Well,
of
they
that
did.
like
That's
automatically, as opposed to.
hey, weatherman.
And I think, hey, weatherman, rotating shield frequency, something like that. But I think you see that when in Voyager, when they start fighting the Borg more, and Janeway starts getting smarter, she's like, they're like, I'm rotating. They automatically start rotating free,
Well, they
shield
did.
frequencies and
They
stuff.
did do that. It started developing with the Borg, and they kind of were doing it on the fly. But then later
Yeah.
on, like First Contact, you were saying, and in Voyager and such, it's like they started building that into their systems. So that
Yeah.
was like an automatic thing that would have. It was just a normal part of it. But see, I don't know that. I think that's cool. I kind of like that. It's like, oh, okay, we're gonna have this countermeasure, to try and.
No, it's good.
avoid that.
You should be thinking like that. But I'm just saying, we've got the U.S. military has frequency hopping probably in all of their radios right now. Why wouldn't you do that sort of thing? Yeah, maybe it'd be a good idea to change our shields automatically. But anyway, at least they're showing us some. The writers are showing us some changes in technology, even if you're thinking I'm thinking that it's a bit. You should have done that, but anyway.
Well,
shields are pretty basic. But sorry, go ahead.
Just kind of a side note about I remember talking to a friend of mine with this and about the Federation or whatever, and I said, if you don't take them out, they're going to win, because the whole Federation thing is they have this core of scientists and engineers, and it's like, what's the problem we need to solve? Okay, we could do it. They can't do it immediately, but they can, and that's what we saw, in the Best of Both Worlds, when the Borg invaded and took over Picard and all that. They just obliterated a fleet of ships, and then a few years later, well, you see these ships fighting a Borg cube and not getting obliterated. It's like they closed that that advantage gap.
Human ingenuity.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. The Starfleet technology is like a superpower.
Well, I think that's more human technology. It's they're saying that humans are very innovative and flexible, and right, they're saying good stuff about us.
Well, it's Starfleet is very human dominated, it seems, but it's not technically human only. It's the Federation.
All right, shall we move on to tractor beams?
Sure.
Let's talk about tractor beams. Okay, so I didn't look too close into this. Reverse swarm of deflector beam, pulling instead of pushing. Tractor beam has a range of about 100,000 miles. Yeah. What do you think about now? What is a tractor beam? Anytime you pull something, you gotta pull against something else. There's nothing in space, right?
Well, it's an electromagnetic field. I'm trying to get to, again, this, I just brushed through this. I didn't get to dig into it real deeply, but it's basically an electromagnetic force field, that you're applying to between objects, or between the emitter and an object, I guess.
Yeah. Now, I would say that you would have to, if you're going to actually pull something, because you got to pull against, you'd have to use, the impulse engines or something, or something on your ship to keep it in space. Otherwise, the two items would just be pulled towards each other, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. They'd have to
so
produce.
You're using automatically, or however, you don't see them talk about it, but I'm assuming they're automatically using the impulse engines or the thrusters or something when they are pulling something towards them.
Yes.
To make sure that they don't get pulled towards it.
Okay, you want me to read it here? Basically, okay. So Starfleet missions sometimes require direct manipulation of relatively large objects in proximity to a starship. Such operations take form of towing another ship, modifying the speed or trajectory of a small asteroid, or holding a piece of instrumentation in fixed position. Require just use of tractor beam. It says tractor beam emitters employ superimposed subspace graviton force beams whose interference patterns are focused on a remote target, resulting in significant spatial stress being applied on the target. By controlling the focal point and interference patterns, it's possible to use the stress pattern to draw an object towards the ship. Conversely, it's also possible to invert the interference pattern to move the focal point and actually push an object. Now, what you're talking about is presumably you could create a balanced force that is essentially a tether. So when they do move, it would drag it or push it.
Well, I'm just saying that two objects in space are attracted to each other and they're going to move towards each other, right?
Yes.
Because of physics. So if you want that actually thing to stop and you don't want to move towards it, you're going to have to use some.
Yeah, if you had no propulsion system, but you somehow did have the tractor beam, it would pull them together relative to their mass.
Yeah. You have to use your engines in order to, if you want to not get pulled towards that. Now in reality, our reality, science. So apparently we have been able to manipulate microscopic particles of matter in a laboratory with laser beams. So we have they're kind of implying that, hey, tractor beams might be possible. It might not be, that far out there science fiction. Now, of course, we're way,
well,
pulling a spaceship is a lot different than a microscopic particle of matter. But
even more simply, you can use a magnet to pull another ferrous object, right? So now that's obviously magnetic, electromagnetic, I suppose. But that's why they talk about gravitons. Well, we can't control gravitons, but theoretically, that's something that exists, or at least hypothesized.
Yeah, and everything would have some sort of gravity, right? So,
everything with mass is subject.
Everything
to
in the universe, and everything in the universe emits a force.
On the other hand, everything else has electromagnetic. Because that's the four fundamental things, right? Is gravity, electromagnetic, weak, and strong nuclear forces, right?
Right. Okay. Good. Anything else? Anybody else? Anything else? Anybody else has about tractor beams? Just checking the chat here.
Weatherman,
tractor beams change gravity in certain spots. That's not what I read, Cam, but it's not actually changing gravity, but it's just it's kind of pulling.
Yeah, it's so again
as opposed to pushing
graviton. So this gets a little bit into because Star Trek has artificial gravity as well, and so it's I would say like replicators and transporters are related. Artificial gravity and tractor beams are similarly related. Let's see. There was a section on gravity generation. Go ahead and talk about something while I peruse this real quick. See if there's a.
Okay, so yeah. So how's everybody's?
Okay, so in the Star Trek universe, graviton fields are created by a controlled stream of gravitons. So in the Star Trek universe, they are able to manipulate gravitons, and do so in such a way that is smooth, as opposed to like we talked about in Babylon 5 with the rotating simulated gravity. It's fine tuned enough that it you don't feel it exponentially more at your head or less at your head than you do at your feet, for example.
Yeah.
Now there's a whole nother thing in the Star Trek technology thing, which you probably don't have down, which is it's kind of two or kind of related, and that is the internal dampening field and the structural integrity field.
Right. No, I didn't. I didn't focus on those, but.
Okay,
you want to talk about that? Sure.
Very, very briefly, the structural integrity field is basically a force field system that is bolstering the structure. So without it, within an atmosphere, for example, they talk about that the Enterprise would kind of collapse under its own weight. So it's just not strong enough. Yeah, it's so essentially there are force fields that kind of run throughout the ship within the structure. It does have it does have a physical structure as well, but under these massive accelerations, it experiences, not to mention getting hit by weapons and things like that. Um, it's not just physical. It's bolstered by force fields. So, and like I said, that's called the structural integrity field.
Yeah, that's interesting because I thought that what are the hulls made out of?
Like tritanium or something.
Tritanium. That's what. Yeah, I mean, you'd think that that would be its strength to weight ratio would be quite. I mean, starships are massive, but I assume that they're relatively light comparatively because the materials they're using are lighter. Like they're these. But okay, that's interesting.
Well, you got to keep in mind it's a massive structure, right? It's well beyond anything we have. And I'm sorry, I wish I could quote that where it came from. I'm recalling that from memory, but anyway, you have
So that makes sense. But I mean, they've talked about using the structural integrity field before, often on ships. I didn't know it was a requirement. I thought it was an additional thing to help keep the ship stable under in battle or whatever. But you're telling me that it's required constantly, because of the speeds it's moving at and everything. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't put my finger on that right now. But okay, so the other thing is in inertial dampening system, and this I imagine would be somewhat related to the gravity system and such. But
yeah,
even accelerating to a relatively low speed of full impulse, if you were to do that over, because they could go to full impulse pretty quickly, right? And so
right away almost.
That would be acceleration far beyond what a human could survive.
Well, if full impulse is a 1/4 of speed of light, right, and they're like Picard's like, okay, go to full impulse, it's like happening fairly quickly, then yeah.
So what this says is
something like that.
Yeah, it says the system generates a controlled series of variable symmetry force fields that serve to absorb the inertial forces of spaceflight, which would otherwise cause fatal injury to the crew. The internal dampening field is generated separately from the structural integrity field, but is fed by a parallel system of waveguides that are conducted through the synthetic gravity plates. Okay, so it is involving gravity plates. It says the IDF operates by maintaining a low-level force field throughout the habitable volume of the spacecraft. Field averages, blah blah, Cochrane's. Okay, so it says as acceleration effects are anticipated, the field is distorted along a vector diametrically opposed to the velocity change. Now, they talk about there being a lag in here and everything, and then there's some commentary about how why when they get hit by something, people are flying across the ship or one side or the other, and it appears as if you're listing or whatever, momentarily, because it can only compensate so quickly. So, but that's the the invention that addresses the fact that you're having these accelerations.
Okay, now the Enterprise D is not as big as the island of Manhattan. I mean, it's big, but it's more like the relative size of a relatively of a ship nowadays. It's not that big.
No,
that's
it's not
like
that
huge.
Big.
Manhattan's how long is Manhattan? That's a pretty like maybe Babylon 5. Well, Babylon 5 is what, 5 miles long.
Yeah. Well,
and
is it 5
Manhattan's
miles? Yeah,
more than Manhattan's bigger than 5 miles long.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the. Well, I could type it into the Groks, I suppose, to see what it is, but I'm not seeing any dimensions. I'm sure they're in here somewhere. I just can't.
There's only the original Enterprise had 400 people on it, and then Enterprise D has, I don't know, is it like 600, 800, something like that?
Okay.
It's not it's
Outpost Nerd is claiming that it is as large as Manhattan. Let's see. I'm guessing the Enterprise is something more like 1,000 meters or something.
Yeah, it's big, but it's not.
According to this, let's see what it's referencing. says it's 641 meters.
641 meters.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what it says for a reference here, though. Okay, specs are consistent across Star Trek resources and Star Trek technical manual. What it says here. I'm sorry, I just haven't been able to put my finger on it here. I'm sure it's in here somewhere, but I'll see if I can find it.
Okay, and Manhattan, the dimensions of Manhattan, the width is 2.3 miles, and the length of Manhattan is 13 miles, 21 kilometers. So, yeah. All right.
Okay, so what else are we talking about? Oh, what was I looking at?
All right, let's just. Madman says breaking news: Star Trek Picard wins 4 Saturn Awards, including best TV. Is that can't be true? Star Trek Picard was like a couple years ago. Nobody cares about that show anymore. Star Trek Picard, 4 Saturn Awards, including best TV series and best actor. Oh my god, that's been a couple years. I guess they're behind. Best TV show.
Yeah, the third season had to end more than a year ago.
The third season was not that good, people. It was better than the first 2, but that's because they were horrible.
That's. Oh, incidentally, you okay? Can I indulge myself here for a second?
Please.
I forgot to mention this when we were talking about the replicators. I mentioned that I had written
a joke. He's lying. Sorry, he's lying.
Oh,
good. Thank goodness.
I
know not to believe that I'm Madman. I was skeptical. All right, go.
I'd mentioned that I had written a Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode that I submitted, and they didn't take it, but they said, oh, well, if you want to write some other stuff, and they gave me the writer's Bible and all that stuff. But I never followed up on that, but it was a fun experience. The one thing I had in there, though, there was the visiting character that interacted with the rest of the crew was used the replicator, and he was trying out different recipes, like to try and perfect. His idea was he was trying to perfect his mother's cookie recipe.
Right.
And so he mentioned something like, variation, whatever, he was trying to get the replicator to tune to that. So I don't even remember why I put that in there, but it was addressing the idea that, there are these differences, or it wasn't like perfect to what you might want. Anyway, so there you go.
All right. So Enterprise D is 642 meters long and 400 wide and 137 meters deep, right?
Yeah.
From top to bottom. All right.
Yeah. So small,
but not quite as big as Manhattan.
No.
Close, but no cigar. All right. So did you want to? You did integrity field, and you did
internal dampening field, and then we kind of touched on gravitational, which was related, again related to the tractor beam.
All right.
But it's via gravitons, apparently, is how
as
the tractor
opposed
beam
to
works.
Electromagnetic or anything like that. Yeah. All right. Any more you wanted to add to that, Cam, or any more other minor systems, less major?
There might be. Let me answer James's question. My DS9 episode basically was about a character that came to the station, was assigned to the station. Not a Mary Sue, kind of the opposite of a Mary Sue, and it wasn't really about that character. It was about the other characters seen through the eyes of this character. So in going about his duties, he encountered.
Well, that's interesting.
Characters, and that's the premise.
Was the very different? Was his observations very different than what the audience would normally see of the characters? You thought Quark was the best guy, and
for some Quark's things there was. For one particular character, there was a specifically different take.
Who's that?
And I don't want to go into it, but
really?
Maybe I'll talk about it some other point. I don't want to give away my whole thing, but
next week on the show, Cam and I will reenact the
right. But
Cam will play the part of the character, and I'll play every other part.
For example, he had a different impression of a certain character than other ones did. And then he like mentioned something about, oh, this, and the other character, like, what are you talking about? Kind of thing. It's like, it's like, who are you talking about? That's because that's not them.
Quark's not a good guy. He's a
Um,
jerk. No, he's really nice.
Something like that. Yes.
The little old ladies and no, he's not a money grubbing.
Again, I don't know. I was happy with it, and it by the time I actually got it sent in, it was kind of the story had moved too far past it.
Yeah, it's too late to.
Yeah,
some of these things are time dependent.
Now, some of the things that I put in there ended up being on the show. I'm not saying they stole it or anything like that because there are no new ideas, but part of it was there was a festival going on, and then sometime later after that there was this festival that was very similar to what I had. Again, not a new idea. A festival's not a new idea. It was just like, it just so happens.
I always thought that Next Gen was not military enough, so I wanted to see an episode where some space marines come on, Federation Marines come onto the ship. They're drinking and breaking things and getting in the way, disrupting the usual of the ship, and Picard has to ferry them somewhere to do some sort of operation or something. And it's like there's some colonel who's of equal rank to Picard, and I mean he's on his ship, he can't really, but there's some clashes between there, and I don't know, the colonel's kind of a hard charging type, and you call him a pussy or something. I don't know. There'd be some sort of, kind of the Jellicoe, but an army guy. Mm-hmm. But that's not that's not an original idea so much. I don't think they did it on Next Gen, but it would be interesting to see the Picard's hands off nicey style versus an army type person who would be much more hey, beat them in the head and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and I think you see a little on Enterprise of that kind of.
Yeah, with the Makos and everything. Now, interesting enough, another story idea I had was that it was about Cisco clashing with intelligence operatives that were kind of bending the rules. Now, I don't think I ever submitted this to anybody, so it's not possible they could have stolen it. But oddly enough, the opposite ended up on Deep Space Nine, where Cisco was bending some
Cisco
rules pretty hard.
He began.
But so again, it's these things are interesting in general, and they would occur to most anybody that thought about it long enough, right? Outpersoner said, pointed out Odo was an egotistical ass. Yeah, oddly enough, Odo didn't like this character. He kind of, he didn't. He was a likable character because he was a young kid that was kind of wide-eyed, idealistic kid. But Odo was kind of like, I got my eye on you thing for whatever reason. He didn't like him.
So So become a member, and then you get to pick one of the parts. You can read that one of the parts from Cam's. This is a good point.
Stack of it somewhere.
This is an interesting, Odo, his values were whoever was in charge. Yeah, he was kind of shifty that way, eh? Like, oh, the Cardassians are in charge. Sure, I'll do whatever. He doesn't seem to have that much in the way of morals, eh? All right.
Okay, where are we up to?
Phasers.
Okay.
All right. So I got some stuff here. I'll just look at it real quick.
Yeah.
An energy beam that can be phased to interfere with wave patterns of any material object. So this dematerialize, converts matter to energy. That's the basically the kill, insta kill type of thing. Disrupt. So that's really like causing damage to you, hurting you. So I guess dematerialize would be the highest setting. Disrupt would be kill but more painful. Heat. Which I guess they would use to break, when they're cutting locks, that would be and then stun, which would be probably the the lowest setting, which would interfere with your nervous system. So that's how it kind of set up. Phaser can be overloaded to create an explosion, and the main phaser batteries can destroy matter over vast distances and are powered directly by the warp engines. Right.
Okay,
Anything you want to add to phase? That's pretty basic, but anything you want to add to
my
phasers?
memory from going way back from some Star Trek game stuff was that it was neither a it wasn't a electromagnetic wave or a particle beam. It was a combination of the two. And what it says here is
Because phaser is kind of a word between, in between
yeah, it stands
a
for
particle and a laser, right?
phased energy rectification. So it says Starfleet command sublight used for passenger phaser, a common term for a complicated energy release process developed to replace pure electromagnetic devices such as lasers and particle beam accelerators. Phaser is something of a holdover acronym, phase energy rectification, referring to the original process by which stored or supplied energy entering the phaser system was converted to another form for release towards a target without the need for an immediate energy transformation. It says it remains essentially true for the current phaser system. So it's let's see, phaser energy is released through the application of the rapid Nadon effect, RNE. It says short-lived subatomic particles possessing special properties related to high-speed interactions within the atomic nuclei. That's a lot. Anyway, that's the pseudoscience behind it, I guess. But yeah, they actually here they talk about, it goes into some depth here, and how it works for ships, but then they also have a whole section on how it works, kind of what you're talking about how um, the different levels of phaser, for example, and how it will disrupt your nuclear bonds or whatever.
Yeah, the highest setting the highest setting we use, it basically converts everybody's. There's not much left except a little bit of ash, right?
Yeah, well, I don't even know if
Dis-
it disintegrates here.
Yeah, and then the disrupt is kind of that's where people get holes in them, and big holes versus small to big holes.
Right. Okay.
It's actually kind of interesting that the Star Trek universe, it's not really that much farther on than relatively, but the technology that they have is way ahead of what might be reasonably, you might look and go 200 years from now. No, there's no way, 300 years from now, there's no way we're going to go that far. Some of the things, versus other science fiction, you could look at that and say,
I think the most unrealistic part of this is probably the battery that you would need to at least currently.
Even warp technology. You think 200 years from now will be?
Oh no, not no. I was talking specifically about a phaser.
The phasers. Oh, I was speaking generally.
No,
but you have a good point, of course. Yeah. How much energy in that little, in Riker's little pencil beam thing,
Yeah, right. It's a tiny little Type 1 phaser he's got there that's the size of a Zippo lighter. Just same thing with lightsabers. It's like how much how much energy is in the light. Well, I guess lightsabers are different because the kyber crystal or whatever does all the work there. But a lot of this stuff in Star Trek is based on having this massive energy source, right? And we didn't talk about that specifically. But the warp technology is it's built upon the foundation of having a matter antimatter reaction, because it takes that much energy to do, whereas the impulse engines are run off fusion reactors. Which again, fusion reactors is a order of magnitude more than we have now with nuclear fission reactors.
Yeah, and they might even be a couple more orders, like depending on the
and
I agree. Correct. Warp engines will be even more than that.
Right. And because matter antimatter reaction is, huge. And then, of course, we just mentioned dilithium in terms of not being able to be replicated. But I don't remember if I ever knew this, but I forgot it before today, was dilithium. Apparently, the reason why it works is it's porous to antimatter, meaning even though it's matter, it doesn't react with antimatter. which is why they're able
it's
to.
It's not an energy source. It's a control item
Yes.
that helps control the reaction.
Right.
And it's not required above, below warp 5 or 6, something like that. But it does make it more efficient. But it's not required. Like Zephyr Cochrane didn't have any dilithium when he broke the warp barrier initially.
Right.
Okay, well, we're kind of talking about matter antimatter. So that's kind of photon torpedoes. That's how they work. It's an energy pod of matter and antimatter separated by a magno-proton force field. Fired directly as torpedoes, laid as mines, scattered in an enemy path like depth charges, etc. So they require a quality of antimatter. So there's actually some antimatter in them. Okay. The explosive yield of 1 gram of antimatter is equal in quantity of and an equal quantity of matter is about 43 kilotons.
That seems low.
Background material in the next gen series say that proton torpedoes carry 1.5 kilograms, which would be 1,500 grams, 1,500 grams of antimatter. So 43 kilotons times 1,500. Yeah.
That sounds like immense amounts of power or energy.
Immense amounts of explosive power.
That seems, I don't know. That doesn't seem to add up right.
You don't think so?
No.
It would now likely it wouldn't like 43 kilotons times 1,000. It wouldn't be directly that, right? Like usually there's some loss, right? So it wouldn't be like this bomb. Like I mean, nuclear weapons don't scale directly, right? This bomb's twice as big, and therefore it'll be twice the explosive power. I don't know if that's exactly how it works.
I don't know. I don't have a good feel for the magnitudes here, but it just seems that much matter and antimatter would be way more energy
than than 43 kilotons.
I mean, 43 kilotons is a lot, but that's 1 gram, right?
That's 1 gram.
I'm just saying, think about what we're talking about, matter conversion. 1 gram of matter would be an immense amount of energy.
One gram of matter would be an immense amount of energy.
To energy.
Oh, would it?
Well, yeah, that's.
Well, you're mixing. No, okay. Well, when you're exploding you're putting the antimatter, and I mean that's what you do in the warp car as well. But you're mixing the antimatter and matter together.
Yeah.
And then you're like saying, hey, we're not going to control this because we want it to blow up, unlike the warp core. So you're just gonna. Well, it'd be 1.5 kilograms of matter, right? And 1.5 kilograms of antimatter mixed together somehow.
Mm-hmm. Generally, what I'm saying is that a matter antimatter reaction I think is supposed to be like orders of magnitudes more than a fusion reaction, right?
Right.
And a fusion reactor doesn't use massive amounts of, or even a fission reactor doesn't use massive amount. It uses very little fuel relatively, right? So I don't know what does 1 gram of uranium produce in terms of energy.
Yeah, I don't know offhand, but you're mixing these two together, which is why there's the explosion, right?
Yes.
Antimatter doesn't explode unless it hits matter, and then there's no bueno.
Right.
Possibly lower in actual practice. And 43 kilotons is relatively. I mean, it's relatively small for a modern.
Right, but they're spitting out these torpedoes like candy, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's a 1 gram. So this is 1.5 kilograms. So 1,500 times rough, the size of that. How they store the antimatter and get antimatter. Well, they're implying that they store it here with, they're kept apart with a force field, a magnophoton force field is what's saying here. But
okay, just for example, I'm just searching here. So, 1 gram of fissile material is equivalent to 2.5 to 3 tons of coal. Burning that much coal. And again, this is fission, which is way orders of magnitude lower than. Hold on, let me see if I can get it to give me in terms of TNT.
Yeah, and it's not meant to. I mean, it's not meant to like you have to refine uranium.
Yeah.
To get it to explode. It's not just going to explode when you just. What's this, Madman? You're talking about other types of torpedoes, quantum, transphasic.
Yeah, quantum was the kind of the next thing they went to.
They brought up, they're quantum torpedoes. They never really said how they make them different, right? You think photon torpedoes would be light torpedoes, but I mean, they're not really. It's matter and antimatter. I mean, quantum might be. Who knows?
Did you say 43,000 kilotons?
No, 43 kilotons.
43 kilotons. Right up there. Yeah, that is small, right? Because what was
relatively.
Like Nagasaki was like 15 kilotons or something.
I'm not sure offhand, but we're into the megatons. Some of the. I mean, 43 is nothing. Kilotons are nothing to sneeze at. I mean, that'll mess up your day.
Well, but that's for 1 gram. It's
that's
1,500 times that.
Yeah, roughly.
I'm gonna get a call from the authorities here because I'm searching for.
Yeah, use the VPN. How much uranium required for a nuclear? Wait a second. Yeah. Transgenic torpedoes, is that actually a thing? I don't think that's
that might be a Voyager era thing.
I think you made that up. Maybe. So the magnetic field is neutral, or the antimatter would react with it. Well, that's what I mean. That's basically, and that's kind of like when we're talking about, we're presently working on fusion reactors, right? And they have a bunch of different theories about fusion reactors, and supposedly, people have every, I keep up on science a little bit, and I occasionally hear, we had a fusion reaction and it lasted for a second, or some sort of small amount of time, not enough to get reliable power out of it. But they always seem to talk about using magnetic fields to maintain these reactions. Little boy was. So I kind of assume the same thing for here. Little boy was 15 kilotons, and Fat Man was 21 and 25 kilotons. So half, a third to a half.
So this is saying, from if it's doing the math here right, that torpedo you're talking about with about the 1.5 kilograms of antimatter would be 64 megatons.
64 megatons. Ooh, that's pretty big. And I believe these might be the original series numbers, which there might be, maybe changes and stuff. 64 megatons. Wow, that's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, so that's a lot,
It's a fair amount. Yeah, that's why torpedoes are a lot more than firing phasers. That's a lot more damaging, as it should be. As it should be, right?
Yeah.
You find a torpedo that should destroy a ship if it hits it in the right spot, right?
I think we have some indications that might be true.
Yeah, that's the general way of in naval warfare where it should be. So I'm sure they're trying to ape that a little bit. As I said, it's kind of interesting. This topic is versus the technology in Star Trek is relatively far advanced for a couple hundred years versus what most other science fiction properties would suggest, like Babylon 5, for example. And that's an obvious one, but even other ones, we haven't advanced this far. The weapons in Star Trek are pretty powerful, to be honest, and only a couple hundred years from now. Not saying it's impossible, but interesting. Modern nuclear weapons requires 12 micrograms of product to create a 1-ton explosion. I'm not an expert in nuclear weapons personally, but
All right.
Okay, all right. I only had one more thing, but we just replicators. We talked about replicators already with transporters. Synthesized meals in demand later series, much larger non-food ends repair. Yeah.
You mentioned industrial replicators. I think the first
I read a little thing about those.
I think the first time we heard about that was in Deep Space Nine when they were talking about because the Klingons attacked Cardassia because they were supposedly infiltrated, and the Federation ended up going to war with Klingons and helping the Cardassians. And they mentioned something like they were going to give them like 3 industrial replicators, and Kira said something like, you gave Bedro 1 or something, So an industrial replicator is implied to be, extremely powerful, that you could be producing a planet's worth of, not like every product, but, meaning vital products out of that.
Yeah. But not, but of the less complicated variety, like you mentioned, the 2 levels. What was it 2 levels? You said quantum versus
molecular.
So, I mean, I think they're tuned for molecular, and they're mainly meant to make, you can make, parts or parts of spaceships or whatever it is, and then they can be put together to, for whatever it is. The Star Wars, the Starforge from Star Wars. Yeah. Well, the Starforge made complete things, I believe. But the article I read, the suggestion was that with 15 industrial replicators, you could pretty much that should be enough for your whole planet to build whatever it is you need. Or if you were if you're knocked back on your let's say you get bombed into like the Narn, you're bombed back to the Stone Age, you could lift yourself up relatively quickly with 15 industrial replicators, and the power to use them. You can make enough stuff for yourself to sort yourself out and bring your civilization back from the brink of extinction. So that's what was suggested.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, all right. Okay. Anything last minute you have, Cam, about I think Outpost Nerd's making the point here. Babylon 5 is based more on real science. I think the Star Trek, though it's interesting, Star Trek might be a little bit, for only a couple hundred years in the future, might be a little bit far advanced. If you look at anything else, like
it's definitely farther advanced.
Yeah, like the Expanse. We've barely got ourselves out of the. We haven't even really got ourselves out of the solar system at that point. I think we might be jumping the gun a little bit with Star Trek. We might not get that far by that time. Who knows?
Yeah, at this rate, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else got covered the major systems? I think. Yeah. And let's talk.
What we didn't talk about was like sensors and communications and things like that, which I'm not suggesting we go into now, but
yeah, that's true. We could talk about. I think that communications would just be based on. Well, it doesn't say that, but you could see how it would be based on quantum, quantum entanglement. You could easily, we've kind of shown that now. You'd assume that there'd be some quantum entanglement type, and you could have instant communications. Though that is the way of that's the communications, how they communicate in like Ender's Game or something like that. Um, you know,
Mm-hmm.
World War IV will be fought with spears and rocks. Right on. Don't forget Madman Cafe on Tuesday. You're gonna have a special panelist, anti-derivative Jill. Oh no, oh girl, oh my, what are we gonna do? Our sensors scanners. I guess they're kind of the same, right? Cam,
I'm saying sensors and scanners.
I would guess. I would, just from my personal perspectives, a sensor would be passive versus a scanner would be more active. It might, active sonar versus passive sonar type of thing. Just my own definition, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Mass Effect has the best example of interstellar communications. Yeah, a megaton is 1,000,000 tons of explosives. Yeah, TNT, I think, based on that. Based on TNT. Yeah. All right. So, don't use your joke. What joke? Oh, well. Yeah. So, Cam, movie night's coming up again already, pretty quickly. I think we should just pick a movie. What do you think about Amazon Women on the Moon? Just do that one.
Okay.
It could be kind of fun.
Where can you find that?
1987. It's on the Internet Archive. You could get it there for free. I got a link. I think that might be a fun one. Amazon Women on the Moon. I kind of got I saw a clip, and it's a bunch of women in weird looking outfits, and they're throwing spears at a spaceship, and it's bouncing off the spaceship. So it's a bit of a more of a humorous, I think, movie, but yeah, it might be fun to do something. And next week, who knows? Who knows what? We'll have to figure it out. What else is coming up? Babylon 5 this week. What are we doing on Babylon 5, Cam? Do you
Sick Transit Veer is the episode, I believe.
Right. Sick Transit Veer. Yes, I've seen that one. I watched it already. I kind of liked it. I mean, it's not really. Is it about the main? No, it's kind of. I mean, it's focused on Veer. It's nice to have Veer on the. Learn a little bit about him, and I think it's got some good development on Veer. I enjoyed it, but not really too focused on the main, problem going on. Sort of, but not really. Is that your thoughts too? We haven't watched it yet, probably, right?
No, I have not.
So you don't remember, but yeah, I watched it. The Zardoz. Oh, I'll have to. We'll put that one on the back burner for a little while. We can't put it on every. We can't put it on everyone. Women on the Moon is like Kentucky Fried Movie. I haven't seen that one though. But all right, good night, Weatherman. Good to see you. Glad you could drop in. Appreciate you. All right. Good night. Might as well do Saturn 4. Oh, that's a good movie. Yes, this week Babylon 5 is about weddings and assassins. Correct. Weddings and assassins. Veer, yeah, he's got the ladies after him. I found it very interesting. When you watch, if you're watching, watch how I found Veer's wife to be the girl that he's supposedly betrothed to. It's a setup marriage. I found her somewhat interesting in the setup. I'll talk about it when we talk about it on Wednesday. Yeah. All right. Okay, Cam, do you have anything else? That's it. Thanks everybody for coming by. Appreciate you coming in the stream, hanging out with us tonight.
No, that's it.
Got anything for us? No. Okay. That's it for the show. Good night, everybody. Oh, wait. Did I forget something? I forgot the jokes. Oh, Cam. Oh, how many jokes? I got how many jokes? I got 4 jokes. No, 3. He won all 3.
Sure.
Really? Oh, okay, great. Why don't red shirts ever host comedy nights?
I don't know. Why don't red shirts host comedy nights?
They always die on stage.
Okay.
Oh, you might not like this one. I kind of get this one though. This is about this is Discovery, Star Trek Discovery. Why did the Discovery crew fail at charades?
Why did the Star Trek Discovery crew fail at charades?
They couldn't stay in one timeline. They can't really stay in one timeline though. Oh yes, I will be in the Discord after. Yeah. Okay. Oh, you know what we didn't? We gotta talk about other shows, other people's shows. Yeah, don't forget to check out Dean, his channel. He's doing his Untold Destiny. He's talking about his RPG that he's working on. He's doing a couple of just today he did a show. There's a bunch of guys that they're doing a playthrough. So he's doing that, and he's also has hosts once a week. He hosts talks about his game. You can come and ask questions.
Yeah,
so don't forget about that.
Tune in for that. Very good.
Yeah, those are interesting. His thought processes on why he did what he did, and how he's trying to make he's trying to make an RPG. He's like, I saw this problem in this game, and I'm trying to fix it this way, and that kind of thing. So, yeah. And don't forget to check out Outpost Nerd at Night. Outpost you've been a little sick. I think you're recovered now, so he's gonna be putting up more stuff. I think he's been a little bit under the weather past week or so. So I think you'll see more up there. Go check it out. Of course, the Bad News Bards. Cam's on that show with Death Angel Shaw. They talk about RPG related stuff. Often have guests. How was the show today, Cam?
It was good. Erudite DM was on and had a nice conversation.
All right, good, awesome. I picked up a little bit of it, but I was prepping for this show, so sometimes it's hard for me. But I have to go watch it later. Don't forget Madman Cafe on Tuesday. I'll be on his show with Anti-Derivative Jill talking about the latest episode 9 of Star Trek Academy, which I didn't think was very good. Maybe better than some other ones, but still not great TV. Check it out. And he's got a new show coming soon, so hopefully we'll hear about that pretty soon. I think I forgot. Nobody except this own show every Sunday night. We talk about sci-fi related stuff, and of course Babylon 5, our retrospective watch. We go through each episode. We take it apart, talk about it. Last episode was pretty interesting. Cam was bringing up some interesting questions. Yeah. All right. So check those out. Oh, and the one last joke before we get going, because we always got to end in a joke. And I will see you in Discord. I'll pop into Discord afterwards. One last joke. Why did Odo become a stand-up comic? These are all comic related.
Why did Odo become a stand-up comic?
Because he could shape the joke mid-set. Those are pretty bad. All right. Not best for the jokes today. Well, thanks, everybody. Good night. See you next Wednesday or next week. Night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Things that people say